So someone asked me why I don't recommend pan frying tofu. Um, I don't recommend pan frying anything, or frying in general, or even air frying. And the reason why is dry heat from frying, baking, and even roasting, and those things. It can cause what are called advanced glycation end products to form, which cause cross-linking, which kind of like cooks you from the inside out. And two of the best books that deal with this are The Wrinkle Cure by Dr. Nicholas Perricone and The Age-Defying Diet by Dr. Robert C. Atkins, the creator of the Atkins diet. Everybody knows him for. But I highly recommend two books that people read by Atkins that are you must read. These are must-read books according to me from Atkins are The Age-Defying Diet, Dr. Atkins' Age-Defying Diet Revolution, and Dr. Atkins' Vitanutrient Solution. Those two books are indispensable if you're trying to be healthy. Now, I want to follow that up immediately with I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a chiropractor, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not a medical professional, plain and simple. Me, not a medical professional. Me, YouTube content creator. You probably shouldn't be taking health advice from people on YouTube. In other words, what I'm trying to say is if you have a health concern, check with a medical practitioner, a licensed medical practitioner, preferably in your area, not with people on the internet that you don't know. And that's just the gist of that. Nothing on my videos or advice, but these videos are for entertainment purposes. Now I'm going to get more into the AGEs, and I'm also going to get into a bit of self-image psychology. I'm not a big fan of psychology, and I'll get into more about self-image psychology in a tiny bit, but not right now. So AGEs are formed when you cook food. They're also formed in the body naturally. They're what causes wrinkles. Okay, that's what causes wrinkling is the cross-linking of proteins and sugars, and that's what causes the wrinkling. This is also why a high sugar diet accelerates the aging process. And if your skin looks like shit, so does your internal organs. A lot of people don't remember that your skin is the largest organ of the body. Your skin is an organ, okay? It sweats, it secretes, it does things. It's an organ, okay? People don't remember that the skin is an organ, and it's the only organ that's in contact with the outside world. And if your skin is all cross-linked to hell with all sorts of wrinkles and everything like that, what do you think your internal organs probably look like? Okay, so a couple things that I avoid. Now, this is what I want people to know. If you're not trying to be a super centenarian, that's been my goal since I've been a small child, is to live well. I've actually wanted to be immortal, and I still pursue physical immortality, which sounds insane, but it's not when you take into consideration technology. And I'm not perfect. I don't manage my stress well, and I'm going to get into self-image psychology in a bit, too, and the role of psychology in longevity. So what you need to take into consideration is if you want to live a really, really long time, there are certain things that you should avoid doing, and those include frying your food, probably baking your food, and you should stick with steaming, boiling, stewing, and microwaving your food. And people go, it tastes bad. Well, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. Nobody's telling you have to be a super centenarian or even try to be a super centenarian. It's just something I've wanted to do. And people will go, well, there's super centenarian people that I understand that, in Okinawa, maybe they do grill their tofu or fry their tofu. But the facts are the facts, and science says that fried, grilled, baked, etc. tofu has AGEs in it, and you should not. And if you want to live a long, healthy life, you don't want to be consuming those AGEs because they can cause things like cancer and kidney failure, and you don't want that if you want to live a long time. Okay, So that's the whole thing, is that's why you should avoid that. Now, getting into the self-image psychology, I don't know why. When I was looking up the information for the AGEs, for whatever reason, Maxwell Maltz's book, Psycho-Cybernetics, like popped into my head, and I'm like, why don't I handle the role of self-image in longevity? I know everybody's going to say, he died in his 70s, what does he know? The point that I'd like to make is that that self-image, now, it's not just him, it's also Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw pointed this out. Mental stability and emotional stability is important to a long lifespan. One of the best ways to improve self-image is through physical exercise. Why? Especially weight training. Why? Because seeing results, seeing your physique change, seeing yourself look better really aids in making you understand that it makes you happy that you're healthier, you look good. Looking good is important, okay? Being preoccupied with looking good and nothing else is not important. But looking good helps you feel better about yourself. Weightlifting makes you look good. The other thing about weightlifting is most people, a lot of people call it newbie gains. Most people respond very well to strength training, especially if you're on a higher protein diet. You will respond quickly to strength training, generally speaking, especially if you haven't strength trained your whole life and you just start strength training. So yeah, that's one way to deal with it. Now with me, with psychology, people know I bash psychology a lot on my channel. I think it's a bunch of horse crap and all this other stuff. And to a large extent, that's true. There are some psychological and therapeutic models that I agree with. Some of them include the Maslowian hierarchy of needs. I think is indispensable if we're going to be honest about people. I'm a fan of logotherapy, Viktor Frankl's logotherapy. Viktor Frankl was a guy that was, I believe, in Auschwitz. I know he was in Buchenwald or something, but he was in a concentration camp in World War II, and that's where he discovered logotherapy. He was a neurologist and a psychiatrist, and then in the concentration camp, he observed the people that did well and the ones that didn't do well. And he observed the fact that the ones that did well had a meaning in their life. And that's where you get the whole concept of logotherapy from. And there's a couple more, like autogenic training. Autogenic training, ironically, was created by a National Socialist. But autogenic training is a method of relaxation. It mixes kind of like hypnotism and relaxation techniques together. It's a very interesting idea. I know it was very popular amongst bodybuilders. One of the first bodybuilder manuals I had from the 1960s mentioned autogenic training and things of that nature. And there's a lot to autogenic training. I'll do another video about autogenic training. And then, of course, there's self-image psychology, which was created by a plastic surgeon by the name of Maxwell Maltz. And it's a very interesting concept that he discovered as a plastic surgeon. He realized regardless of what he did to someone's face, he could fix their scar, he could reconstruct their crushed-in face or whatever, but he could not change the way they felt about themselves. And that's when he determined that self-image is important to somebody's well-being. And one of the things that's interesting is he brought up when he was in Germany, the fencers. He was a fencer, and they would intentionally scar their faces to show them they were a certain degree fencer or something. And there, that was a badge of honor, whereas elsewhere, and he said that's where he realized, it doesn't really matter. It matters what the person thinks about the way they look. And I don't promote that too much because it's a slippery slope to fat acceptance. I'm just joking. I do recommend people read his book. Actually, I recommend people read all their books. Read Logotherapy in a Nutshell and Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I can't remember the title of all of Maslow's books off the top of my head. I do own them, but I'm not physically at my place, so I can't see my bookshelf, which is not really my bookshelf. I just have stacks of books. I can't afford a bookshelf. And I also recommend people read the autogenic books. I strongly recommend people understand, if you're not trying to be a super centenarian, maybe you don't have to boil, stew, or steam your food or microwave it. But I would recommend that because kidney failure is not a fun thing. My mother had kidney failure from diabetes, and it's not a fun thing. I actually offered to give her a kidney. The good news is I have zero chance of developing that diabetes, as far as I know, from what the doctors told me. So that's yay me, you know what I mean? And also, it's a difference between the way you eat. This is the thing that people don't understand. I'm gonna do reviews of books on nutrigenomics. One is by Dr. Nicholas Perricone, and the other is by somebody else I forget the name of. But nutrigenomics, which is a very important, this is where nutrition goes to the next level. It's like epigenetics. It is epigenetics, actually. But nutrigenomics is the way that food influences gene expression. We know food influences gene expression. We know that. That's why protein, high amounts of protein, can have a steroid-like effect on the building of muscle mass. People don't know that. If you're getting your 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight versus somebody that's getting half a gram of protein per pound of body weight, and you're practicing vigorous exercise, one of you is going to get better gains than the other one. Guess which one that would be? And it's because of the way that the protein affects hormone levels and things like that, and different pathways such as mTOR and such. So you can see that food is a powerful thing. As Dr. Sears, the founder of the Zone Diet, said, the Zone Diet is based on using food as medicine and keeping the hormone levels, particularly insulin, insulin and glycogen, within a certain balance, a certain homeostasis. And that was the whole idea, because Dr. Sears, a lot of people don't know this about Dr. Sears, and I'll put a link to Dr. Sears' diets or not diets. I have a whole Dr. Sears playlist. But most of his work was done with drug delivery systems and things like that. So when he thought of food as a drug. How do we use food to elicit a certain hormone response and keep that hormone response where we want it? And that's the basis of the Zone Diet, in case anybody wants to know about that. See, I used to show people, when I used to teach a group for the overweight, I would show them, and this is the thing, like I said in previous videos, basically every diet works. It's just a matter of do you want to do it? And this is what irks me about people that complain, I want to be vegan, but I can't be vegan. I don't know how to do it. Oh, sometimes I just need bacon. You're not a very dedicated vegan. I'm gonna ramble a little bit about veganism. One of the funny things that I always found about veganism, I'm not a vegan. Then the reason why is because veganism entails certain ethical considerations that I do not obey. I will buy things, predominantly second-hand leather. I will buy second-hand leather because I don't want to participate in the leather industry firsthand. But the thing is, I'm okay with laboratory testing on animals, not frivolous laboratory testing on animals, but I'm okay with laboratory testing on animals. I think it's an unfortunately necessary thing so far, although they are coming out with different things like the human genome on a chip and things like that, where you can test an organ systems on a chip and things like that, where you can test drugs with artificial intelligence. But right now it seems like it's still a necessary evil. It's a necessary evil to test on animals, and it's unfortunate. But you can do any kind of diet, except maybe the carnivore diet, vegan. And it really gets on my nerves when people are like, how do you, I'll never forget, people used to ask me, how are you low carb and vegan? Well, I just don't eat so many high carbohydrate foods, and I focus more on higher fat and higher protein foods. And that actually brings me to the Eco-Atkins diet. And there will be links in the description to the Eco-Atkins diet. It's because people don't understand I know the Atkins diet works, okay? And this is, a lot of people diss Dr. Robert C. Atkins. Well, the Atkins diet saved my life. Literally saved my life. I was dying of hypercholesterolemia when I was a teenager because of psychiatric medications and hospitalizations and psych units where I couldn't get enough exercise, and my cholesterol was dangerously high, and I was over 300 pounds. As hard as, well, it's interesting. I'm 5'11" now. I actually have not grown much since I was 13 years old. But from the age of 11 to the age of 13, I was very overweight until I was put on the Atkins diet. Technically, it was a ketogenic diet, like the John Hopkins ketogenic diet, but it was the Atkins diet. It's the first phase of the Atkins diet, and that's another mistake people make, is they think the whole Atkins diet is the first phase. It is not. There are other phases. Eventually, you will include whole grains, fruits, and things like that back into your diet, but people never make it that far because they always go, I can't poop, and the reason they can't poop is because they're not eating vegetables. They're not eating considerable amounts of non-starchy, low-carbohydrate vegetables and non-starchy, low-carbohydrate fruits like tomatoes and eggplant and lettuce and spinach and all these other wonderful fruits and vegetables that are actually on the Atkins diet that somehow nobody knows are on there because they don't read the damn book and I read Atkins and it's deadly. Now, how do you make Atkins better? Well, you make it vegan. If you make Atkins vegan, you make it better. And somebody did research to prove that, about the great effect that it has on blood lipids and how it helps with heart disease and metabolic syndrome and things like that. And the link is in the description. So yes, the Eco Atkins diet, which I think is a silly name, I would call it the vegan Atkins diet, but I'm not a hippie. But the vegan Atkins diet, the 100% plant-based Atkins diet, is basically like a miracle. It's a dietary miracle. And people like to ask me like how, and I was doing Eco Atkins before I knew Eco Atkins existed, because when I transitioned to veganism from, I think I was ovo vegetarian. I think I had given up dairy but kept eggs. So when I transitioned from ovo vegetarian to veganism, essentially, what I would like to say, I was doing an Atkins version of a vegan diet. And I thrived on that diet. And I think that if more people actually took into consideration, that's another book you should read, the Dr. Atkins' New Diet Revolution. And the thing is, not enough people actually read that book. Not enough people understand that book. Yeah, he defames vegetarians in the book. Not openly, but I mean, you can do a vegan Atkins diet. I think what Atkins' point was, or problem was, is he would get so frustrated with people like Dr. McDougall. There's actually a podcast, and Atkins is explaining to him about the vegetables in his diet, and McDougall goes, "You can have vegetables on your diet?" And Atkins' response was, "Did you read the book?" And McDougall said, I read most of the book. No, you didn't read most of the book if you didn't know vegetables were in the diet, because that's phase 1, for God's sake. If you read the frickin' book, you know damn well there's vegetables in the diet. And that's the problem that I think he had, is he would get so frustrated that he closed everybody out for his own pet theories. And don't forget, people have pet theories. Science is not as objective as people think it is. Or I should rephrase that. Science is objective. Scientists tend not to be objective. Some scientists have a bad habit of looking at the data to find the results they want instead of, and that's the beauty of meta-analyses. That's where the meta-analyses come in. And that's all for this video. I know it's a little rambly. Follow the links in the description. Understand the links. It will give you the answers. And it'll help you get a better grasp of what I've discussed in this video regarding advanced glycation end products, how sugar and baking food and frying food. Frying food is, of course, the worst. That's how you get the most AGEs, or advanced glycation end products. So avoid fried foods. Just avoid fried foods. But definitely, if you really want to be a super centenarian, start considering boiling, stewing, steaming, and microwaving your food as opposed to frying, baking, broiling, and grilling your food. Dry heat is not a good thing when it comes to things. Also, of course, drop the meat. Drop the meat. Drop the meat. Okay, that's another thing. That's one of the ways meat. See, that's one of the things where everybody wants to bash protein, bash protein, bash protein. You got new 5GC, you got cholesterol, you got gobs of saturated fat, and you also have AGEs in meat. The only way a human being can safely consume meat is cooked. Okay, and I have a link to the Cooking Ape, which shows why humans have evolved to cook food, to eat cooked food. This is why when somebody tries a raw food diet, a lot of times, especially women, they'll lose their period even on a high calorie raw food diet. It's because you can't absorb the calories, because the calories are going right out the other end. And the other problem is a lot of women on the raw food diets, even if they're using liquefiers, even raw food omnivorous diets that include raw meat, like sushi and raw steak and stuff like that, it's not absorbable. It's not working. And that's in there too. It's from the Leakey Foundation. The Leakey Foundation, of course, an anthropological foundation, where the gentleman explains why a calorie is not a calorie is not a calorie, and why cooking food helps you absorb the contents of the food, the micronutrients, the macronutrients, etc., and why humans evolved to cook their food. People don't understand that. There's really not many people on Earth that choose raw food, except for Eskimos who have no choice. But if given the opportunity to have cooked food, they go to the cooked food. And that's all for this video. Follow the links in the description. Follow the links, understand the links, yada, yada, yada. Boop.